Hiya! Welcome to this, my 60th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled Happy New... What year is this again? I chat about future cop Sam Tyler's adventures in the American version of Life on Mars, a new season of Doctor Who gets off to a great start, I reflect on recent celebrity deaths, a whole bunch of music videos, my By the Number segment, and From a Galaxy Far, Far Away, movies. Welcome to the show. He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy. Starting out, we are now the proud owners of a treadmill. My boss says treadmills are just expensive coat racks, but I'm hoping to prove her wrong. I set ours up directly in front of the TV in our living room. It's got perfect space for the remote, so my goal is to watch whatever media we've got saved to the DVR, all while getting some exercise. Well, I say some, definitely more than when I was invariably plopped in the recliner, so we'll see how that theory holds. I mention it because in order to make space for the treadmill, all of my commercial media collection had to move, so 2 birds, 1 stone, couple of dead birds. I moved them all upstairs. 40 disc sets, 50 DVDs, and more than 6 VHS tapes. Over 70 if you include 2 VHS box sets of Monty Python and 6th Dr. Colin Baker's Trial of a Time Lord story arc, when we put our tree up first weekend in December. So, as of this brand spanking new year, treadmills up, trees down, and all that media join me in our home library. To be honest, it didn't all need to be in the living room. Front room, media center, media lounge. With this ongoing project, I'm rarely switching out discs and watching them, and should I ever want to watch anything on VHS, the only working VCRs are, guess where? Yep, same place I do all of my cataloging, same place I do all my transfers, and when I get to the point of backing up my commercial VHS media, assuming I can figure that out, this is about where I'm going to need them all to be anyway, so seemed like the right move overall. Now on VideoFuzzy, a fond reflection. Before I get into the Friday night feature, I wanted to pause a moment here for a few fond farewells. Won't be giving them anything like the attention they deserve, but oh man, René Auberjonois, I've enjoyed him everywhere I've encountered him. I'll revisit this farewell. He is absolutely a golden thread in my collection, and I'll explore that more presently. Episode 58, I listened to some music that took me back, and absolutely Marie Fredriksson. I know I've got some Roxette music videos in my collection. Stations playing Must Have Been Love on heavy rotation for a bit there, but I'm remembering their debut single, She's Got the Look, so much more. Song premiered the year I graduated. It made a huge splash, had a solid hook, and wow, I've got to say, Marie, so damn hot. She absolutely had the look. What a terrible loss. And oh wow, all the Linda Lavin love I've been lavishing over her appearances in Brockmire and 9JKL. This just takes me way back. The news that her television son on Alice, Tommy Hyatt, played by Philip McKeon, died at 55, barely a few years older than myself. Philip McKeon, Nancy Jo McKeon, names I grew up watching and shows I loved just too soon and sparked a lot of nostalgia for me. Speaking of, with everything else that's been going on, I wasn't going to mention this, but the West Wing episode, Eppur si muove, showed up in my Disc 813 in my classic collection. It's an episode in which Stockard Channing, as First Lady Dr. Abby Bartlett, was filming a guest spot on Sesame Street to highlight the importance of getting vaccinated. About midway through the episode, towards the end, featured this silent exchange between Allison Janney as C.J. Craig, seated in a corridor at the White House, and, late puppeteer extraordinaire Caroll Spinney as Big Bird pads up to her, sits beside her. Part of the power of this exchange sparks a memory from the first season episode in which CJ learns her Secret Service codename is Flamingo and her antipathy towards her association with large, ridiculous birds, and suddenly, for no reason whatsoever, Big Bird wanders up to her and settles in beside her. They look at each other. CJ, or Allison, it's really hard to know, works very hard to suppress a smile, gets up and walks off, leaving Bird alone with his thoughts. This project, you think you just have this media you've recorded. I could have cataloged that episode months ago if I'd not also been podcasting. The West Wing gives episode titles in the beginning. I could have noted the title and skipped on to the next. And that scene itself, zero context, could so easily have been cut and never made it to television. All of these means by which at this moment in this cataloging effort that man's passing could have passed uncommented, but I, so quite by chance, catch a glimpse of a fluffy yellow nostalgia bomb in a moment for me and for so many people in so many childhoods. I'm happy to pause and remember this huge part of my childhood. Nothing. He's been playing this character since for the span of my entire life, just about, encapsulated within a wordless yet profound exchange between two amazing performers. Safe travels, Big Bird. Thank you, Aaron Sorkin, for recalling him momentarily into my view.
Friday Night Feature.
Initially, I'd planned on examining the pilot episode of Sci-Fi's Sanctuary, which turned up in my classic collection on disc 814. Not with much enthusiasm, mind you. Sanctuary, and I'll probably explore this more as the show established itself and dug into stronger storylines, but as of the pilot episode, it hadn't significantly differentiated itself from the show I savaged in episode 58, Primeval, and while I remember viewing its progress with gathering disinterest, I remember enjoying its first season. Fortunately, I was so close to breaking into my new binder, more on that in a while, I powered through and discovered, this is a weird episode of Life. I watched it, it looked like, what's he doing in New York? What episode is this? I catch glimpses of, is that Lisa Bonet? Where's Sarah Shahi? Is this a flashback episode? Well, as the cold open car chase narrows in on a suspect, it dawns on me that that's not Damian Lewis, and he's not playing Charlie Cruz. So I rewind to the beginning and rewatch without preconceived notions, secure that the show will reveal to me what it is I'm watching in due time. Oh, and it did. Yep, ABC presents Life on Mars. On disc 829, I found Jason O'Meara as New York City detective Sam Tyler chasing down Colin Rames, sought in connection with serial abduction and strangling cases in 2008, discussing his relationship with partner, professional and romantic. His department knows about one of those, his partner, Detective Maya Daniels, played by Lisa Bonet. They catch Rames, but have to kick him loose because his alibi for the abduction seems airtight. A few days later, however, they learn about his twin brother, about the time Sam has learned Maya's gone after him on her own, and has gone missing. Sam is following a lead, listening to David Bowie's Life on Mars on his iPod, when he becomes the victim of a hit and run. The song continues as he comes to in 1973, playing on an 8-track in what looks like a Camaro registered to him. He catches his reflection, dressed as a 1973 plainclothes detective. The neighborhood where he got schmucked was still under construction at that time, and his ID shows he's a recent transfer to his precinct, the 125th, from the upstate training program in Hyde. He's carrying all of his memories from being a homicide detective in 2008, however, and his new colleagues find his disorientation amusing when they do not find it outright annoying. His new captain, Lieutenant Gene Hunt, played pitch perfectly by Harvey Keitel, introduces him to 1973, or, as our Chinese brethren call it, the year of the fist! Jonathan Murphy and Michael Imperioli as Detective Skelton and Carling tried to help his transition to the 125th by getting him checked out by Gretchen Moll as policewoman Annie Norris, part of the Bureau of Policewomen. Her skills as such overlooked and dismissed. The division calls her no-nuts, so that's dismissive. Sam and Annie discuss the world as it appears to be versus the world he finds himself in. She talks about her role on the force. It projects life in 2008, probably doesn't have a Bureau of Policewomen. She's mostly after lost kittens, domestic violence, concussed detectives, all of which seem, a little beneath someone with a degree in psychology and a passion for law enforcement, but here we are. At this moment, Lieutenant Hunt comes in and informs the squad of a body that has been received to the morgue. Signs of strangulation. Details spark Sam's memory, very similar to the Rames case he's pursuing in 2008 when Maya went missing. Sam views the body. The similarities are unmistakable. There's some print leads they're following up. Fingerprints. Should be back in a couple weeks. It's amazing what they're capable of these days, Skelton says. Sam finds fibers under the victim's nails. This time it's not hair. Sam figures anyway Rames would be a child in 1973, but insulation. The strangler is holding his victims for 30 hours in a soundproof room before killing them. Sam's intuition leads him to a minor disturbance, a noise complaint from neighbors. The woman who filed the complaint said he was always running his stereo so loud, and then not a peep. Sam hightails it over there, discovers the killer, Willie Kramer, has a fan, an impressionable young Colin Rames, imprinting on this killer, growing up as a fanboy copycat. Noise complaint lady actually was Colin's grandmother, so proximity. Sam Tyler in 1973 is able to follow up leads and rescue the victim. He also has a time-traveling idea that killing Colin Rames in the 1970s means Maya will be safe in 2008, but thinks better of it. He'd encountered this in 2008, too, kids who cheered for Colin while Sam was trying to arrest him. Instead, Sam tries to reach out to him, make a connection, try to turn him down a different path. Hard to know what will happen. Ripple effects, ripples make new ripples, but it's an approach. At about the halfway point in the episode, Sam has a conversation with Annie where he lays out the possibilities. I had an accident, he said, and woke up 35 years in the past. That either means I'm a time traveler, I'm delusional, or I'm just imagining all of this. Annie suggests that she's real because Sam can touch her. He says, what if you're just my mind telling me this is real? The jury stays out on this tantalizing question throughout the run of the series. There's hints that he's still in 2008, sleeping it off in a coma, hearing voices through the television discussing his condition and course of treatment. Radios turn on by themselves and he hears voices from his present, Maya, telling him she's okay. There's hints he's constructing for memory and suggestions he's crafting this world as he's encountering it. He tries to go for a long walk, assuming his brain will run out of images for him to experience. There's only so many details, he said. And that, of course, is nothing compared to the first image he encounters in this new world he finds himself in. The twin towers of the World Trade Center gleaming in the sunlight. In that moment, a powerful image for all of us, honestly. Life on Mars on ABC followed a similar track to the series' Inspiration, the BBC production of the same name starring Philip Glenister as Gene Hunt and John Sim as Sam Tyler. That show aired in 2006 and held Tyler in a very confused limbo between his present and his past. It ran a couple seasons and had a spin-off set in the 80s with another David Bowie song titled Ashes to Ashes. I watched and loved every bit of it. It was the craziest idea. If he hit and run time traveled, where does clothes come from? How is that car registered in his name? What the hell car hit him? A DeLorean? But highlighted progress in today's police professionals from their benighted past. Of course, all of this was pre-Ferguson, but it was also post-Rodney King, so the shows were interesting to watch and evaluate my own privileged reaction to. Police procedure when no one's looking, by the book versus getting results, not to mention attitudes regarding race and sex, us and them, and the premium placed on loyalty in closed ranks. Then and also, well, they gave Michael Imperioli's Detective Ray Carling all the best lines and really made you wish this series was running on HBO for a couple of reasons. First, he got lines like, "Oh, watch me pull a rabbit out of my labanza," and, "Well, I can fart all the Peter, Paul, and Mary tunes," and "He's crazier than a fruit bat at a cranberry convention." Don't get me wrong, limitations push the cleverness up higher and higher levels, but just imagine what all that would have sounded like with a judicious sprinkling of profanity. That and, oh yeah, it had been less vulnerable to ratings concerns. I'm not sure any of these shows had the absolute best endings, but I'm certain that this one-season American storyline had the worst. It had been fun to see what might have been. I feel like the best part of this series was how open to interpretation it remained. Is Sam Tyler a lawman from the future? Is he in a coma trapped in his own head? Has he in fact died? The characters drive the storyline, but the time shift, the costuming, the soundtrack, all the attention to detail, that gave it life, saved it from being a period police procedural or a sci-fi cop drama. The way it was written, what Sam was going through seemed to have larger implications. Why him? What was he doing there, and what's he meant to figure out? And in the meantime, who's this Gene Hunt person? His colleagues? Annie? Figments? Obstacles? Means to an end? By the end of the pilot episode, he'd gained their grudging respect, but reaching out to the serial strangler as a boy, could he make a difference? Save his girlfriend Maya? Keep that hit and run from happening in the first place? Whatever version I was watching, it's always good storytelling, and I'm happy to celebrate that wherever I find it. Really great to re-encounter this series and this set of discs, and very much looking forward to watching it more as more episodes come to light. Cross Connection. Given the confusion implicit in this episode title, I'm gonna pursue my exploration of life on Mars a bit differently this time. This one's kind of awesome because I can trace emotional cross-connections for myself through several series. First, as I mentioned, ABC premiered this production in 2008, a couple of years after I'd been watching a very similar show on the BBC America, so I basically transferred all of those feels, which the production largely earned, especially with the Twin Towers providing such a shock of wish fulfillment. We weren't a decade removed from that loss. Even post-Katrina, the devastation was still quite regularly on our screens in some capacity or another. Hell, the entire cable series Rescue Me was centered on it, so that inclusion was dramatic and it was earned, and its first appearance at the crescendo of the title track, David Bowie's outrageous lyrics from a 1971 LP release, Hunky Dory, the single released in 1973, tracking through not one series, not two, but three with the Ashes to Ashes spin-off. I wanted to see if I could do it without the help of Wikipedia, but honestly, between the American and UK series, the only other instance I could point to from memory is Jessica Lange's anachronistic performance of the piece in the fourth season premiere of American Horror Story. Her character, Elsa Mars, a prosthetic-enabled amputee and ringmaster for a traveling freak show, belting it out in a show set in 1950s America, just outside Jupiter, Florida, to be exact, dressed as Bowie would be for its video release 2 decades hence. Wikipoodle lists several other appearances, including an instrumental trace in an episode of The Watchmen, another connection there with Michael Imperioli. There's a Bowie reference in the Doctor Who episode The Waters of Mars, ultimately an alternate timeline fugue unworthy of the series, and several other movie and pop culture references with which I'm even less familiar. Suffice to say, this multi-week chart topper was reprised in several iterations and earns top spots in lots of best-ofs, not least of which number 1 in Daily Telegraph reviewer Neil McCormick's Top 100 for 2015. I mentioned emotional connections, however, and this one tracks beyond my actual collection to what I would consider more my media biome. Having grown up in the 1970s, I enjoyed shows like Barney Miller, a New York-based detective squad. I suppose the most direct successor we could identify would be shows such as The Unusuals, starring Harold Perrineau and Amber Tamblyn, and oh wow, and Google tells me it's a Noah Hawley production. Detroit 187, hi again to Michael Imperioli, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which everyone loves, and I probably would too. It features Andre Braugher and Mark Kevin Jackson and show creator Mike Schur, but I've seriously got way too much to watch, so outrageously good as it may well be, that's just going to have to wait for the port, when Netflix ports directly into the back of my skull and I can access everything at once. But yeah, Barney Miller traces a lot of emotional connections for me. I identified a lot with the late Steve Landesberg's aloof, above-it-all intellectual Arthur Dietrich, and obviously the late Ron Glass's appearance in Joss Whedon's Firefly and Serenity polished his association with that production in my memory. Tracking Max Gale from Stan Wojciechowicz to his appearance in Psych was pretty awesome, and both Landesberg and Hal Linden in the title role of that production made appearances in The Golden Girls, which was fun to see. In more conventional cross-connections for this project in my Studio 6 Feet Under challenge, the American run of Life on Mars, I already mentioned a few, but I'm showing Jason O'Mara in Man of the High Castle with Stephen Root, who was in Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing, of course. He was in Boston Legal with Ed Begley Jr. off 6 Feet Under, so reasonably tight connection there. Plus, oh wow, also in Man of the High Castle, Rachel Nichols. Prior to my starting this cross-connectional exercise, I highlighted her profiler, Rebecca Locke, on The Inside, featured in episode 29. Co-star Adam Baldwin worked with Studio 60 Sarah Paulson in Serenity, so yeah, these are not tough connections to make. Golden Thread. Stephen Root and Rachel Nichols are golden threads in my collection worthy of their own spools, but I wanted to step away for a moment, and the BBC America, I click through the listings sometimes. They occasionally run episodes from the Trekverse, Next Generation, Voyager. I was confirming my recording of the Doctor Who New Year special, more on that in a bit, and I saw episodes from Deep Space Nine in the lineup. Instinctively, I hit record. My earliest memories of television include an exasperated René Auberjonois storming through the governor's mansion looking for Robert Guillaume as Benson! That was a tough wire to walk as the Malvolio of the piece, supervisor, in fact, boss of charismatic title character, technically servant, but in all actuality the guy running the place, subverting expectations of race and class in a primetime sitcom in the 70s and the 80s. Auberjonois found his voice and paired it with his remarkable gifts of comic timing, emotion, and energy, which served him admirably through his long and brilliant career. I drew the connection instantly when I saw him opposite Avery Brooks as Captain Sisko aboard the station Deep Space Nine. Oh, Renee, I thought, once again second banana to a charismatic black actor. But the parallels were glancing. Auberjonois held his own as Odo, the shape-shifting chief of security. His occasional slap fights with Armin Shimmerman as the owner of Quark's bar were entertaining, and his character and shape-shifting abilities regularly drew him to the main storyline when he wasn't the primary storyline in his own right. I left one of the recordings running this past week and caught a glimpse of Odo chatting with the founder in the 6th season episode Favor the Bold, comforting him. Odo, you never have to be alone again. There was more going on, obviously, but it seems like a profound line to encounter at this moment in any context, ahead of his characters joining the Great Link. Looking forward to rewatching those episodes in full presently. In the meantime, yep, as I said, this is an actor I've been following with great enjoyment for my entire awareness of television, but as regards my collection, Auberjonois did a lot of voice work in shows I know if I never archived, I watched at least some of, including The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley, Darkwing Duck, and oh wow, Chef Louis in The Little Mermaid. I know I was at least aware of Erie, Indiana, even if I can't remember anything about it. He was Edward Nygma's supervisor in Batman Forever. I know I've got that somewhere. I mentioned his work on DS9, and before they made him a partner in Boston Legal, he showed up as someone else entirely in Parent series The Practice. He was in a couple episodes of Frasier. Whether I kept them or not, I definitely watched them. He was in Star Trek Enterprise. I kept a bunch of that one. I feel confident I will encounter his appearances on Archer, on Warehouse 13, and I've already made note of his appearance on Saving Grace, taking on the very difficult role of the pedophile priest who molested Detective Grace Hanadarko in her childhood, who she abducts and confronts in his retirement. He's been in so much more, and I'm sad to bid him farewell, but thank you so much, Monsieur Auberjonois. Wow, how he'd have livened up Ratatouille 2 post-inspection. Les ratons, how I love les ratons. Scramble mousse from my kitchens forthwith. For all that could have been, farewell and white light, sweet man. Diving into my classic collection. I mentioned up there 1,000 years ago, and I mean, wow, this one has taken a long time to put together, so I appreciate your patience, that I had comments on Sci-Fi Sanctuary turned up in my collection on disc 813, a two-part pilot called Sanctuary for All, cracks open a window on a world that unfolds alongside ours, a cryptozoological bestiary of monsters, mutations, and freaks of varying paranormality. This story tracking along the edges of conventional reality, and one in which Amanda Tapping, as the extraordinarily long-lived Dr. Helen Magnus, shelters and protects the interests of the abnormals, as they're called, against those who would do them harm. It wasn't a bad introduction, a bit trite. A refugee child's body is produced or is host to a snake-like and somewhat violent third arm, as it were. Helen's trying to bring him in for safekeeping, just as the police have brought in a scientist to investigate. Robin Dunn is Dr. Will Zimmerman, who stumbles into Helen's world and, despite his initial skepticism, is drawn to assist. And that'll do for now. Honestly, once they were done laying in the groundwork, the show got better, and I'll have more and better storylines to discuss, so more later. And while it doesn't redeem the series, I encountered an episode in Criminal Minds that did provide a reminder of part of what was drawing me in the first place, and possibly did a better job than the Paramount Network's 6-part exploration of Waco I savaged some 40 episodes back. Wow, I have been doing this for a while. In their 4th season episode, Minimal Loss, the team engages an armed religious compound after receiving an anonymous phone call alleging sexual abuse by the spiritual leader. The group is religious and weird and is designated child brides, but not contrary to the laws of the state they're in, and they're all pretty much living their lives. Everything's consensual when, oh wow, the feds are called in and they're gonna firebomb everything, and Thomas Gibson as Aaron Hotchner rips them a new one for being pig-headed trigger-happy jerks. My heavens, was David Koresh guilty of nothing? Anyway, a firestorm of violence later, it turns out the call was from a jealous mother of a girl whose daughter was given in troth, and hey, if everyone just lived and let live, all the dysfunction could have been contained, as in internalized. Based on these productions, I feel like starting a religion where I just do whatever I want, call it gimme, and when the police show up demanding I answer for all the theft, rape, tax fraud, and assault, I assert my First Amendment rights, and they all shrug and walk off, saying, "Yep, can't interfere with anyone's deeply held beliefs." Goodness, Michael Jackson should have just designated Neverland as a church. He could have done any damn thing. Other finds. Anyone remembers my conversation with Kim Files in episode 21? I found another one. In 2008, then Kim Quill and I appeared on the KX Noon Show in Minot to promote the Mouse River Players production of Neil Simon's Plaza Suite. This is so embarrassing. I completely spaced that we'd ever work together. Well, for one thing, we did and we didn't. Like in the Minot Area Theatrical Society's production of Simon's California Suite, where I played a philandering husband caught with a call girl passed out in my bed. I absolutely remember working with Alyssa Sweeney and Nicolette Nelson, but I couldn't tell you who else was involved or what happened in their scenes, because the shows were in fact several self-contained one-act plays. So for Plaza Suite, I for sure remember working opposite Heather Tallman, playing the hapless parents of a frantic, sobbing bride-to-be, trying desperately to coax her out of the bathroom, but I just do not remember the other scenes in that production. Gotta say though, when I find these Noon Show promos from a decade ago, I am really very happy with my ongoing commitment to exercise and better eating habits. I know the camera adds 10 pounds, but seriously, wait for it. How many cameras are on me? Thank you. I'll be here all week. Tip your wait staff. Kim looks great, of course. They misspelled her name, poor thing. She spells it Kim, like a hymn, a church hymn, but with a K. They spelled it with 2 M's. She talked about her act with Carl Smith, Jesse and Muriel, high school sweethearts. He's become a big Hollywood producer, and she's more than a bit of a fan. I talked about my scene with Heather and about David Bradley's scene with Holly Idnes, Act 1 of the show. David and Holly always do such great work together. I've watched him in so many productions, also completely spaced that I'd worked with him in this one, which, sitting here talking to you, I don't remember all that much, except my sleeve got ripped off my arm every night in that one, so I did my own stunts. I mostly remember David in another Simon production. Lots of those over my time with community theater in Minot. Prisoner of Second Avenue, but I digress. Mainly ran across a deeper connection with a friend of the podcast and was happy to highlight it. I was motivated to barrel through the last 30 discs or so for this episode because I was so close to breaking into my new binder. So I have encountered quite a lot of media worthy of comment that will not get comment because there is so much of it. But I found a lot of series recordings they re-aired on basic cable. Like The West Wing, I found a lot of season 5 episodes they re-aired on Bravo, along with some episodes of HBO's 6 Feet Under, which they also edited heavily and re-aired on Bravo. I caught a good chunk of campaign activity. We were in the run-up to the 2008 presidential election. There were some debates and some analysis. Most of us remember how that all shook out. And I encountered second season episodes of Pushing Daisies, which featured, of all people, Diana Scarwitt, the mom from Wonder Falls. I found another episode of The Nine, starring John Billingsley as Ethan Foote, which I mainly mentioned because I also found his appearance on 6 Feet Under in this set. I found more episodes of Fringe, one featuring a guy whose body affects electrical current, usually beyond his control. He's got a job as a delivery man, and he keeps messing up his handheld device. He's got a crush on a receptionist at one of his regular stops, and as he's heading over there, the show's playing REO Speedwagon's Can't Fight This Feeling Anymore, which, yep, I know means nothing right now, but honestly, when I talk about it later, put a pin on that. That scene was a solidly good use of that song. Second season premiere of Eli Stone introduced Sigourney Weaver as a therapist, perhaps as the episode continues, a therapist with godlike abilities and insights. Hard to know, but were I casting God in the late aughts, she'd be on my short list. Great addition, but I don't think it was ultimately even possible to save that show, which I felt had been sputtering for the latter half of its first season, and as the second season got underway, the cracks were really showing. Oh well, long as it's in my collection, may as well watch where it goes. Finally, another potential candidate for a feature at some point, Jekyll and Hyde reboot centered on sales rep sleeper agent split personality presented by Christian Slater. How? What? The interface is all someplace within his own brain. A control module implants memories to explain lost time while the secret agent half of him is off doing espionage. And when things go wrong, it's bananas. No, this was entirely unworthy, but if it lasts for any time at all, I'll get a little more in-depth, I promise. Checking out my current collection. I want to start with the 12th season premiere of Doctor Who, the first of a two-parter called Spyfall, and if you're subscribed to this, probably won't be a spoiler, but yeah, spoilers abound through this segment, so if you're avoiding, I really hope I've given you enough time to pause or stop or delete. Still here? That's on you. The world's in crisis. Spies are being tracked and neutralized around the world. Stephen Fry, as C, head of MI6, calls on the Doctor to send her team of well-intentioned but largely not trained companions to infiltrate the offices of Daniel Barton, the charismatic CEO of global information systems conglomerate VOR. That name probably not chosen randomly. Then Barton's birthday party, after encountering transdimensional aliens from the edge of our reality, the investigation of which reunited the Doctor with an old friend and colleague, O, hiding off the grid in Australia. There's some suggestion that he's also hiding out in one of the several potential timelines for planet Earth. I'm sure we'll dig into that more as well. Because, as it turns out, O, played by the wow, was this guy engaging Sacha Dhawan, is in fact just the latest incarnation of the Doc's best frenemy, the Master. The moment of this reveal, his absolutely childlike glee in having fooled the Doctor, clapping his hands with irrepressible delight, undoes all of Missy's TARDIS dungeon penance. He's not reclaimed. He's not redeemed. He's done the thing the Master always does, with the Nestine consciousness, with the Daleks, with Cybermen, this time with energy beings from beyond our reality. To wit, he introduces destructive chaos for nothing more than the joy of doing so. As I'm writing this, Part 2 is set to air this very evening, so very much looking forward to what happens with the Doctor, caught as the scene fades to black in, as a reviewer friend of mine referred to it, a cosmic shag rug. Good luck, Doctor. the other significant entry in my current collection. This highlights how long I've been putting this one together. While I was putting our Christmas decorations up, I was watching the FXM retro production of Raquel Welch's Fathom and the 2017 remake of Flatliners from the 90s. While I watched those, I had the MTV Classic Music Video channel going, and it built up a ton of videos, mostly from the 80s, starting with a set called Metal Mayhem, and I might have let it go, but the first one it recorded was the late Ronnie James Dio singing Rainbow in the Dark. The block I recorded, and I'm very glad to have built up a couple hours backlog for watching these, because there were plenty of bad videos in this group that needed fast forwarding, and the commercials that supported them were not of value. But as I watched them, I realized there was some value in archiving even bad videos for the sake, if nothing else, of comedy and as examples of the art form. For instance, there is nothing at all bad about Alice Cooper's song Welcome to My Nightmare. It's a little repetitive and not especially explicit about the inner demons he's fighting off, but oh wow, when they made this 1970s release into a music video, Alice is in a four-poster bed in zombie death mask, slash hat, and roughly prom tux, center stage, and his nightmare includes 3 costumed figures, one with a giant styrofoam snake head, I think, looks more like a skinny lizard, and probably most disturbing, possibly for him, horror film staple Vincent Price looks to be sneaking up behind him. Zero context. Alice welcoming us, more likely Bob Fosse's nightmare, as choreographed figures pants about, because this was filmed in the 1970s and people weren't doing music videos yet and hadn't quite figured out what they were for. Not, mind you, that they got a whole lot better at it. Most of the set of videos I recorded because what the hell? The first one I grabbed, I love the song, but wow, in Dio's 1983 release Rainbow in the Dark, the supporting storyline, a milquetoast nerd stalks a housewife to a seamy East End sex shop, intercut with Dio on a rooftop acting out lyrics, possibly for the deaf. Later I encountered his Last in Line video, where a delivery boy takes an elevator to hell, where apparently video games are part of the corporate mind control conspiracy we all need to break free of. Who did he imagine his audience was? In what universe was that Venn diagram not a 100% overlap to players of video games? Also, nabbed a couple of videos from Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime release, which was a brilliant concept LP, presented here as concert footage intercut with supporting B-roll for the anarchic Dr. X and Operation Mindcrime, the New World Order pursued by an underworld cabal at the drug-fueled nexus of sex, drugs, and political corruption. That philosophy reflected somewhat in Megadeth's nihilistic Symphony for Destruction, which I also kept in all of its glossy precognitive excess. As messages go, Queensryche's was way more coherent than Green Day's American Idiot, but I've enjoyed encountering that group's iteration of Boulevard of Broken Dreams in one previous incarnation. Hanoi Rock's very different, very glampy mid-80s release, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and much more recently, Keith Urban's 2016 John Cougar, John Deere, John 316 reference sings he was a child born of backseat freedom, baptized by rock and roll, another rebel of the great wide open on the boulevard of broken dreams, learned everything he needed to know from John Cougar, John Deere, John 316. So really, that one's more reference without context, but it's kinda sad to watch that evocative concept, which Wikipiffle asserts dates back in pop culture nearly a century, transformed over the course of 3 decades from an anthem of personal empowerment into slacker nihilism and then to some vaguely conservative notion of acceptable rebellion. Looking at this collection, lots of motivations in hitting that record button. I recorded Poison's I Want Action, mostly for the comic skit they ran at the beginning. I also grabbed Elvis Costello's Every Day I Write the Book. The song was okay, but the presentation seemed so ridiculous. Speaking of ridiculous, the video for REO Speedwagon's Can't Fight This Feeling was, oh wow, that was the earliest days of computer graphics, must have cost a fortune, and for all that was just a train wreck. The concept seems to involve a man reflecting upon his entire life experiences from birth to death, growing up, meeting a special someone, one candle joining with another in marriage, and then, for some reason, flying out a window, then in retirement and death, the painting of a ship at sea that comes to life and sails away. Which, sitting here talking about it, that arc has nothing to do with the song. Just zero. The song is a profession of love seeking to transform a friendship into something more romantic. It fully acknowledges the war he's waging between anticipation and self-doubt. The images are at times confused and chaotic. Crawling on the floor, crashing through her door, ew. But oh wow, it does not support the images foisted upon it this bizarre and almost upsetting video, intercut with equally odd B-roll of band members looking lovingly at each other. Not a good video. The way they used it in Fringe, like I was saying, now it makes sense, that would have made a much better video. Not everything was class project examples of terrible music videos. I also kept videos I enjoyed quite a lot, or at least enjoyable music, such as goodness, for days afterwards I was humming Christina Milian's Dip It Low. Slutty video, but fantastic song. Well, slutty song, but who cares? In this crazy world of ours, uglies sometimes need bumping. I'm also quite glad to have archived Cinderella's Nobody's Fool, London Beats, I've Been Thinking About You, Rob Thomas's Lonely No More, and oh wow, the dance break from Genuine's So Anxious. That's just a celebration of human engineering. Then, for some, it's a real crapshoot where the songs ranged in quality from the images paired to them, like Wang Chung's Dance Hall Days or Kajagoogoo's Too Shy, Peter Murphy's All Night Long, R.E.M's Orange Crush, oh hell, Sir Elton's I Don't Want to Go On With You Like That features a couple male dancers pursuing a kicky blonde when they'd clearly be more interested in each other. And serving as almost the perfect capstone for that disc, Heart's These Dreams, which the songs, the images, the 80s, do I like it? Do I hate it? Yes. What I can say for sure, over the course of the evening, I'd collected a solid mix of oh wow and what were they thinking, and I'm happy to have all of it. VideoFuzzy at the movies. And yeah, in the time I've been cataloging like 36 discs in my classic collection, I have seen so many movies. I talked about Knives Out in episode 59. That was pretty much the point of that one. I stand by it, every word, possibly the best movie I've ever seen, track it down. Plus, I finally watched FXX aired The Revenant, which I've wanted to for a while. Very strong statement about loyalty, redemption, and karma. I saw Next, which made for interesting discussion fare for this installment. Nicolas Cage plays Vegas magician who sees 2 minutes into the future and uses this gift for his act. He's also got longer-term visions of a woman he's become obsessed with, a teacher who becomes entangled in his life just as government agents seek his assistance in averting a nuclear detonation in Los Angeles. Nope, none of these storylines are especially plausible, and when you pile them together, you get a mess, but it's at least a fun mess, speculative, generally entertaining. It builds some nice tension and some cool visuals with the might-have-beens. Excellent free cable fare. One I remember seeing with Ralph a few years ago that was way more along the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure end of the spectrum was the animated Mr. Peabody and Sherman movie, bouncing through history in the Wayback Machine, learning life lessons, facing down bullies, sharing, learning, and growing, and by the end, the central relationship in the piece, Mr. Peabody and his adoptive boy Sherman, is stronger for it, but while it was generally entertaining, nope, not sure it needed archiving. I've kept worse. IFC and BBC America happened to air a bunch of 1980s movies heading into the holiday season. I watched Stephen King's Stand By Me, a reasonably cool and arguably stronger treatise on standing up to bullies, and Steven Spielberg's Gremlins, about which seriously no commentary is required. That was a coming-of-age film centered on a 20-something bank teller, his friendship with a school kid, the eternally budding relationship with the plain but clearly interested coworker who moonlights as a waitress. During the rising action, she continues schlepping drinks for the violent little monsters, rather than, oh, hey, running screaming into the night. Mogwai physics are hard to track, just in terms of growth rates and energy exchange. One gremlin hops into a pool and somehow becomes dozens of gremlins. Just, yeah, ancient Chinese guy magic, but it doesn't hold up to scrutiny of any sort. Even as a horror film, say you unleash these little engines of chaos upon your small town, but they all pile into a movie theater and watch Snow White. I'm sorry, but what are they all after? The show seemed a lot stronger in my memory, and it did somehow spawn a sequel, which says quite a bit more about Spielberg standards and cocaine use during the 80s than they probably anticipated. In all fairness, the movie Mannequin 3 exists, so I'll just leave that point of fact right there. Oh, and there's no relief to be sought by Studio 6 Feet Under standards. Gizmo was voiced by Howie Mandel in St. Elsewhere with Ed Bigley Jr. from 6 Feet Under, so tight as that could possibly be. I mentioned a couple movies up there I watched ahead of all these music videos, one campy, one grim. In 1967's Fathom, Raquel Welch plays a sexy skydiver roped into the recovery of a jeweled Chinese artifact prized for its cultural significance, monetary value, and international intrigue. As more and more people join in the chase for this MacGuffin, Fathom must use all her wits and sundry physical charms to sort out the good guys from the bad guys and get it back to where it belongs. I also watched a remake of Flatliners with a philosophical twist from the original I remember featuring Kiefer Sutherland and Kevin Bacon. In the original, the medical students try to glimpse an afterlife which continues to affect them in their recovery. They find they're tormented by their greatest, most troubling sins against others. In the original, they must seek forgiveness from those they've wronged. In the remake, the priority is that they forgive themselves, which, given the absence of a Control-Z option in this life, is probably healthier than wallowing in guilt. Somehow they'd mostly not even been thinking about these past wrongs until they went through their flatline experience, but then in some cases made them suicidal. But yeah, strong, reasonably good remake.
What I've been watching.
Well, it was December, so time for another Star Wars movie. Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, capped off a saga that opened in 1977, outlived original cast members in ways that at times deepened the emotional notes in the scenes we were watching, and oh, wow, it's a Disney thing. They will continue to wring the money out of this franchise for decades to come. We're in such a safe era for series. New releases show up as trilogies, which become forages. Harry Potter, no end in sight, regardless of Rowling's apparent transphobia. And never mind 50, we got a million shades of grey going on. Somewhat ironically, an endless array of dystopic universes flourish in every direction, and a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, one family apparently causes Setsuris we need 3 trilogies to explore it. Apparently, per midichlorians, telekinesis and mind control, also weaponized photons, red for bad, blue for good, gold for balanced. Balanced in Rey could not through her apparently grandfather's extortion. The movie's been out for weeks. Can we talk about it? Look, if you made it this far, you're not that worried about spoilers. Emperor Cheney still exists as some sort of energy wraith sufficiently powerful to raise a fleet of ships armed with cannons capable of destroying planets, equipped with it would be impossible for anyone with the engineering skills to design them to miss the obvious flaws of the nav system. Kylo Ren had the green glowy thingies that led him to Palpatine. Rey was then tracking him, but needed the assistance of... Wow, the droids just get smaller and more adorable. The next one is going to be a post-it with a smiley face on it just called Love You. Anyway, this one, a little droid called Dio, located somewhere on the spectrum. Just, what an amazing coincidence. It happens to have the information they need to find the exact other thing they need to track him down. Sadly, C-3PO can't share the coordinates because they're in Sith, and his programming forbids him to translate it. Useless. Fortunately, there's an even more adorable droid whisperer, Bevu Freak, who can get him to do so. Seriously, you're a protocol droid. Of what value are you if you can't translate enemy languages? If he wipes his entire memory? If he can do that, why can't he just jailbreak Threep's no-no code? Of course, for the lofts. So the Ragtag Rebellion is on its way. Rey and Kylo Ren are able to communicate across light years, physically transferring objects from where each other are. Also, Vader was his grandfather, Leia and Han sought to raise him on the light side of the Force, but he was drawn to the dark side. Rey is building her power within the Force, but her natural inclination as the granddaughter of Palpatine is to the dark side. Well, she tracks down the information she needs to confront Palpatine. It leads her to the wreckage of the Death Star, and she's there and Kylo's there. They fight, but her influence makes him open to the counsel of his mother and father's ghosts. He has become Ben, and joins Rey in her fight with Palpatine. There's a dozen other things going on in this movie with Poe and Finn and Chewbacca and Lando and Janna and this festival in the desert. The Millennium Falcon kicks every kind of ass. Luke affirms Rey's path and, when we first see her at the beginning of the movie, she's floating in meditative communion with the Force, but later she's really struggling among the wreckage of the Death Star, and I'm like, why don't you just use the Force and float? Never mind, the settings and scenes all lead to a high-stakes showdown, an epic all-star shoot-'em-up, and in the end, when Rey declares herself a Skywalker, she raises her golden lightsaber, presumably having finally brought balance to the Force, apparently a priority of some sort, and the saga concludes. Sure, okay, I've got some thoughts. I felt like The Rise of Skywalker brought decades of uneven storytelling to a respectable close. I feel like the priorities of the Empire were rarely well defined. They were just bad because bad people are bad. Adam Driver's internal struggle between Kylo Ren and Ben, his lust for power and such upbringing he'd have had from Leia and Han, crafted this terrifically awkward character that makes sense on paper but wouldn't have been put in charge of much in reality. This thing's been running most of my life. They quite sensibly kicked its creator out of the driver's seat before he could mess it up too much. Taken as commentary or realpolitik, it is valid if occasionally broad. Taken as a life philosophy, the way of the Jedi is positive if a little undifferentiated. Taken as sci-fi, I'd have liked to have a little more sci in it. The thing relied quite heavily on quantum mechanics, and this story, set at the intersection of psychic manipulation of the physical world and advanced scientific understanding, struggled to make sense from the perspective of either. That said, positivity, honor, and loyalty won out over fear, rage, and destruction, though not always and just barely sometimes. R.I.P., of course, to Carrie Fisher and Peter Mayhew. Chewbacca, General, safe travels. Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, you rock, well done. Adam Driver as well, all-stars Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, love you. Love Samuel L. Jackson, Billy D. Williams, so good to see you again. For sure we needed more Rose. Kelly Marie Tran, absolutely. My vote's going to Vice Admiral Holdo for franchise MVP. That was awesome. Thanks to J.J. Abrams for putting this particular ball into the end zone, and wherever it goes from here, my guess is shelves of increasingly kawaii merchandise for however long it sells. Thank you to everyone involved for this significant cultural phenomenon, and may the Force be ever in your favor.
Crunching some numbers.
This isn't especially auspicious by the numbers, marking as it does a couple of milestones. Less significantly, perhaps, as I have now recorded 60 podcasts since I began this effort 2.5 years ago now in June of 2017. At the time, my cataloging efforts had taken me into my second binder of discs, my commentary beginning with disc 229. The binders I use hold 208 discs each. I have, as I've stated elsewhere, some 2,570 discs, which are distributed into 13 binders, 12 of which are shelved pretty much all the time, and one of which is sitting out on a small table as this catalog effort proceeds. Bringing me to what I would consider my more significant milestone. As of last week, my cataloging efforts have unlocked a fifth binder. Binder number 5, The Trumpets, opens with disc 834, featuring a Daily Show send-up of the waning days of John McCain's presidential campaign struggling. The Trumpets.
A little bit of Cynthia in my life, a little bit of Sarah by my side, a little bit of Hillary holding on, a little bit Obama holding strong, a little bit of Bristol in the news, Sasha and Malia looking cute. I've had enough of Megan on The View, and quite enough of this now. How about you?
Aww. As I was saying, struggling to stay on message, The Trumpets. During the economic downturn of 2008. Hard to know what else I'll find in this one, which stretches to disc 1041. At some point I skipped a disc 362. No idea how it happened, but it did, which is why my disc set's now open with even numbers and close on odds. My classic collections continued my process of recording 2 hours per disc, rather than the 6 hours per disc I'm recording to my current collection. Thus far, I've collected 1,672 hours of media in my classic collection, compared with 1,758 hours in my current collection of 293 discs. That pencils out to 3,430 hours of media cataloged, which is more than 20 weeks, about 4 3/4 months of media I've transferred from hundreds of VHS tapes dating back to the 1980s, as well as I'm currently recording to DVD. This podcasting project has highlighted some intriguing discoveries, at least in my opinion. Comments on John Waters films, Carol Burnett's 50-year reunion, Monty Python, John Cleese, Kathy Griffin, Robin Williams, Doctor Who, Fringe, for Christ's sakes, and current productions like Supernatural, Parks and Rec, The Good Place, Ted Danson, Kristen Bell, William Jackson Harper. Oh wow, more Doctor Who yet to come. Plus, one of my very favorite parts of this, tracing connections through my media collection and finding them all over the place. Sure, I've absolutely archived shows I will never need to see again. I've had so much fun making mad, passionate fun of, say, Wisdom of the Crowd, Numbers, Wire in the Blood, oh man, Primeval just a few episodes back, but I have definitely saved material I will return to again and again. Once I have this collection cataloged, I'd like to pull up movies I've archived but have as yet never actually watched, and shows I'd love to watch again but for now are just archived, especially Battlestar Galactica and Fringe for sure, and oh wow, the 3rd season character arc of Lincoln Meyer on Boston Legal. Get your nuts out to catch Name I'm About to Drop, friend of the podcast, possibly more accurately, acquaintance of the podcast, passing awareness of the podcast, never mind, I'm completely starstruck, actor and author David Dean Bottrell. I added him on Twitter that I'd found his appearance on my disc 825 in Season 3, Episode 7, Trick or Treat. His character took a shovel to the back of a judge's head in a parking ramp and said, "Oops, I didn't see you there, Judge." Bottrell replied, "Thanks, Terry. That was an amazing episode. Very fun to shoot." And he hashtagged Boston Legal and show creator David E. Kelly. It was like an interaction. Or an intervention. Either way, a very sweet, famous person acknowledged me. So, with that, let's put 2019 to bed here and shine ourselves up for a 2020 where we've hardly even had a chance to mess things up all that badly. Oh, crap, it looks like once again all of our baggage has accompanied us into the new year, right along with all of our various neurotic fears and misanthropy. Well, maybe once The Good Place resumes this week, it'll help us with some of that. No pressure, show creator Mike Schur. But yeah, milestones. I mentioned up there I'm in a new binder. This past one took approximately 10 months to catalog. The one before that took about a year, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm saving a bit of time by glossing over the appearances of The Daily Show and The Colbert Report where I find them. I can always go back and add more detail at my leisure. For now, I mainly want a useful map of what's on these things, and as of this past week or so, I'm another binder further along. And with that, thank you so much for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com, my past episodes at Apple Podcasts. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites, via email, or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing. It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out for sure the next VideoFuzzy.
This is podcasting gold. What are you talking about?
Video Outtakes.
By the end, the central relationship in the piece, Mr. Peabody and his adoptive. Why am I keep saying obnoxious? And his adoptive boy Sherman is stronger for it, but